Today we're gonna make the Jamaican spice bun, which we have mainly at Easter. So these are the ingredients which we're gonna use. We have mixed spice, cinnamon, guava jelly, browning, which is optional, depends on how dark you want the bun to be. We have vanilla, we have soaked raisins and cherries for garnishing, for decorating the top. We have some red wine, molasses, vanilla. This is a stout. We have two stouts we mainly use here, which could be Dragon or Guinness stout. And we have the flour, and we have sugar, and we have margarine or butter. So let's go. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is measure out the ingredients. Before you start to make anything, especially in baking, you measure out all the ingredients first. I'm gonna show you to a few little tips and tricks and as I go along. One of the things I have to show you, this is a 1 cup measuring cup, right? And you know, measuring cups comes in different sizes. This is for dry ingredients. It usually comes in something like this or this. No, this is the cup for the wet ingredients. Okay, so when you see with the spout and everything, this is for wet ingredients. You have them in the glass too, the big glass ones. You have those too. This is for wet, this is for dry. If you're not sure, you can look at the front. You see it's marked in cups, and on the other side you will see ounces or mils. So that's when you know this is the liquid cup. Okay, so another thing, when anything says 1 cup or 2 cups of the ingredient, for example flour or sugar, you don't just, let me demonstrate for you. This is not a cup unless it says a heaped cup. This is not a cup of flour. It means when you say 1 cup, it means a level cup. So this is like a palette knife. The thing with these is that the edges are definitely straight. If you don't have any, you can get a regular knife, like a dinner knife, but the back is straight, so you would use the back here to level off, right? So just make sure I even out the edges, and then you go and you level. So this now would be a cup of flour because it's leveled off. So sometimes when you cook and you see the things are coming out right, it could be because you didn't use the correct measuring practice. All right, so let's go ahead now and measure out all our ingredients, and I'll get back to you. The recipe with the exact amount I use for each item will be in the description. Okay guys, so I'm gonna measure out the dry ingredients. I've already measured out the flour, so now I'm gonna add the baking powder. So there's another little tip I want to show you where the baking powder is concerned. As you notice, the tins usually come with a little metal part here. There is a purpose for it. What you do when you're measuring, this little part here, this little flat surface, when you scoop up your baking powder, you use it to level off the spoon. So remember I showed you earlier, we use the knife when we're using the cup. Well, like here, we don't have to use anything else to measure to level off this because it's all done here for us. So I already have a straight surface to level off that. So I'm going to measure the baking powder and the cinnamon and the mixed spice. So the nutmeg, I'm going to grate some nutmeg now. I like my nutmeg grater, and my nutmeg, I don't buy the one that is in the bottle already grated because I think this is much more flavorful. So I'm going to grate my nutmeg and measure out the rest of the items, and then I get back to you. So now I'm gonna add all my dry ingredients. I have the mixed spice, adding them to the flour, and I'm sifting them together. I have my nutmeg, I have my cinnamon, baking powder, and the salt. Never forget your salt. So I'll finish sift this, and then we come back to our wet ingredients. What I'm gonna do is melt the margarine or the butter, whichever you decide to use. I'm gonna melt that, and then after I melt that, I'm gonna add all the stout and everything on the flame to ensure everything, all the sugar is melted out. So what I usually do, find one of the reasons I like to sift, you usually find that the baking powder sometimes has some little hard bits in it, so that usually ensure the sifting, it breaks up those little bits. So the next step now is to melt the butter. So what I'm gonna do, you can melt the butter in the microwave, but I'm gonna melt it on the stove, and I'm gonna melt it in the pot that I'm mixing all the wet ingredients in. That just makes it easier for me and one less thing to wash up. So this is 8 ounces of margarine. So I'm not gonna be too exact in terms of weighing it. I just divide it in 4, and I'll just take out a quarter of that, and that will be my 2 ounces of margarine. So I'll melt it, and then you will see how I incorporate all the other ingredients together. So when I'm melting the margarine, I'm not gonna let it get too hot. Once it starts to melt and the little hard bits are left, you can just turn off the stove, and the heat from the pot will just finish melting out the rest of the margarine. And you're gonna add the stout and everything, so everything will get melted eventually. I'm gonna measure out the stout now and the wine. So I need 1 cup of the stout. So I'm gonna bring it up to the 1 mark. Some froth is in it too, because you know there are a lot of bubbles in stout. So I'm gonna ignore the froth and just fill it up to the 1. So there we have it. So I'm gonna add the stout to the melted butter, the margarine, and then I'm gonna measure the wine and add the wine. I need a 1/2 cup of wine. I'm gonna bring it up to the 1/2 cup mark, and 1/2 cup. It went a little over. The half is just below there, where the bottom, not at the top here, where the bottom, this line, with the dark line, it should have been right here. It's a little over, but that's fine. So now I'm gonna add the wine, and I'm gonna keep the heat on low. So it's gonna be a gentle process, no boiling, just gently heat it. So I'm gonna add the sugar now to let it melt, and I'm gonna take it off when the sugar is fully melted. I'm adding the sugar now. Okay, so I'm gonna test to see if all the sugar is melted. So as you can see, there's still some sugar crystals in it, so it's not fully melted as yet, not fully dissolved as yet. So I have to let it stay a little longer. So now our sugar is all dissolved. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna leave it to cool a bit, but during that time I'm gonna also add a tablespoon of guava jam or guava jelly, whichever one you have. That's fine. If you don't have it, you can maybe use apricot, whatever you call it abroad, jam, but this is Jamaica, so we use guava jam. You should be able to get that in some of the West Indian stores abroad, in the States or wherever you live. So I'm just gonna melt. It melts. You could just let it stay there until I'm ready to incorporate it into the dry ingredients. I'm also gonna add some molasses, but I'm not quite ready to add that as yet. When everything is cooled down and I'm adding the flour mixture, then I will also add the molasses. So what I'm gonna do is show you. Let me put this to the side a bit. So this is the molasses we use. We call it blackstrap molasses. Whichever molasses you have, we use what we have here in Jamaica. I'm gonna grease my baking tin, my loaf pan. So you can, to grease the pan, you could use some vegetable oil with a pastry brush. I'm gonna show you what I do. I use one of these gloves just to make it easier and so it doesn't get messy, and put a little margarine on it. And then from there, I just grease it. That's easy. So when I'm done, I just throw out the gloves and I don't have to make a mess. So now my pan is ready. So I get all of that good molasses out of the spoon. The next step now, we're gonna fold in the flour. We're not gonna put all of it in one go. We're gonna use some, about a half of it. Mix that in, and we add the fruits, then we add flour and add fruits. So we're gonna fold it in. I like my whisk too. You can use a whisk if you have a whisk to break up all the flour particles, the clumps. As it gets thicker, it will be easier to mix out the flour. So this is a cup of, these are currants. You can use currants or raisins. I only had currants soaked. So if you have raisins or currants and they're not soaked, what you can do is just put a little wine on it, put it on the stove on low heat, don't let it boil, and when everything gets heated, you turn off the stove and leave it for a little bit, like 20 minutes or until it is cool. And now I'm gonna add the rest of the flour. You can also add mixed peel, but I'm not a fan of mixed peel in bun. I'll use it in cake, like our Christmas cake, but then I blend it out. I don't really like the chunks of it. So you see it's mixing quite nicely now. Nice consistency. So you know how to fold. You cut down the middle and you go around, you cut down the middle and you go around. But this is not a light cake. This is a bun, a heavy bun. So I wouldn't really worry about that. And I'm gonna add the rest of the fruits, the currants. There we go. So I don't like the as I said, when you're adding browning, it's optional. If you don't like it dark, then you can just leave it as is. But I like mine a little darker. So I will use some browning. So I'm gonna use a tablespoon and see how that looks. What I like to do is to, because sometimes you get little bits on the spoon, so like flour is still on the spoon, so I just scrape everything off to make sure, and scrape down the sides with the spatula. That's it. So I decided to add about another half tablespoon of browning. I just felt that it needed to be just a little bit darker. Yeah, this is more like it. I have another tip for you. As you cook, the reason I have all these bottles and so over here and not everything measured out, because I wanted to show you who are not familiar with the Jamaican type of products, what they look like. So what I do, as I finish with things, I put them away. So as I was putting away the stuff, I realized I didn't put in the vanilla. So that's why it's so good to always, don't just leave everything. As you finish with something, you put it away. So that means anything which is left back, that means you need to put it in your dish. So that's a good way. Don't wait until you're finished or you think you're finished, then you do your cleanup. As you go along, you clean up. As you finish with the ingredients, you pack them away. Okay, I want to show you what I had done. After I had greased the tin, I decided to put a little sheet of paper just on the bottom of parchment paper or grease paper on the bottom, and then I put a little more margarine on top of that. This ensures that if I decide to take it out while it's still warm, the bun doesn't get stuck to the bottom. It shouldn't get stuck because it's greased, but you never know. I just want to be careful. So I'm gonna pour the batter now into the tin. It's a really good consistency. This is a 10-inch tin. You can use a 9-inch, but I only had a 10-inch. So your batter should be about 3/4 or 2/3 of the way up in the tin. It shouldn't, because it's gonna rise, so it should not come to the top of the tin. So if you have a smaller container and you're putting it in and you see that it's rising, it's going too close to the top, more than say 2/3 way up, just put the rest in another container, because it will rise and overflow and mess up your oven. Okay. So if you want more raisins in, if you love raisins and you want to put more raisins in your bun, that's fine. If you want to put less, or if you don't want to put any at all, if you actually want to add cherries to the body of the bun itself, you can do that. If you want to add your mixed peel, you can do that. It's up to you. Just, or if you want to add like nuts or whatever it is, just be adventurous. You don't have to do it the same way that we've been doing it all these years, right? So now I'm gonna put cherries on top. When we were growing up as kids, they used to have cherries on top. I don't see that happening anymore of the bun, and we as kids, we always wanted our slice of the bun to have a cherry. So now that we're adults, we can actually put as many cherries as we want. But they're no longer putting cherries on. But I haven't seen any buns so far this year with the commercial ones. And they make some pretty good buns in Jamaica, but you know, we still like to do our own thing. Put it at 350 degrees. And my bun is done. So this is the baked bun. But it bursts at the top because it was a smaller oven, so I should have put it at a lower temperature. But it's still all is well, no problem. Still gonna be yummy. So next time I'm using that small oven, I just ensure I drop the temperature to about maybe 325. So I'm just brushing it now with a little a dampened brush and a little guava jelly, just to give it a little sheen. You can use any jam you want, as long as it's not too strong to spoil the flavor. So you just give it a little sheen. You can use honey too. And that's our beautiful bun, Jamaican spiced Easter bun. This is the bun now that's finished, and we eat it with cheese. This is a special cheese we have here in Jamaica. We call it Tasty cheese, and it has that shape because it comes in a round tin. So you see one side is circular. So that's it. We just eat like a slice. Some people like to just have like a slice with the cheese on top, or just make a sandwich. And we have this for Good Friday breakfast. Really, really lovely. And that's it. So remember to like, subscribe, and share. And the recipe will be in the description. Thanks for watching.